answer this one question for me right now. If you had a crappy technique, what are the steps that you would take right this very second in order to take it from being terrible to being expert world-class level? There's this undervalued or poorly taught topic that most students are never even made aware of that they have staring them right in the face. They are normally left to either figure it out themselves or they have to create it on their own. Imagine you actually understood exactly what you should be training, you actually had the resources to train it, and you even knew how to make adjustments if your training wasn't going the way you wanted. Thank you to all the new Jiu-Jitsu fans who have recently just subscribed. If you're one of those newer fans and you have not subscribed, please do so right now. Hit that subscribe button. Also, make sure you give this video a like. It really does help me in the YouTube algorithm, and it helps me get seen by people maybe who don't know me yet, and I can help them with their jiu-jitsu. And then if you're a super duper fan, down below I just had now enabled this thing called a super like, where basically you can leave me a small tip or donation because you like my videos so much. And just know that all the money that goes into that, I just put back into producing better quality videos for you guys. If you don't know, my name is Chasen Hill. I'm a first degree Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I've been teaching and training now for close to 14 years, and I help Jiu-Jitsu students just like you get a little bit better every day by tweaking their Jiu-Jitsu. So if you couldn't answer the first question, you're just like many other Jiu-Jitsu students, and you're even like myself at one time. Now, that question would be fairly easy to answer if you had ever created some kind of a training approach or some kind of training system. Now, that sounds like a lot of words. It's kind of like learning how to train Jiu-Jitsu and not learning a bunch of techniques. So basically, it's the same thing as if I go to the gym and I want bigger muscles, what do? Well, I grab weights and I work out the muscles that I want to get worked. That is what a training process is, or a system for Jiu-Jitsu. The problem is most students have never been shown how to train Jiu-Jitsu effectively or wisely. In fact, most people have never learned how to train Jiu-Jitsu at all. Most of the time, students just show up to the gym. It's either they pick a move of the day or it's whatever their instructor is showing, and then they go out there and they just randomly start training. So it's my firm opinion that most students have never developed or been taught any way to actually train Jiu-Jitsu. Just go out there and try. So trying is not the same as training. For a Jiu-Jitsu system to be effective, I believe that there are 3 key components that make up your system. The first is the type of focus that's going to enter your system. So what is going into your system that's trying to get better? The second is how do you make whatever you entered into the system better? So what are the resources you're going to use in order to make your technique or move or whatever you want to train better? And then third, how do you determine if your system or the technique that you entered into the beginning actually got better? How do you actually measure the results of what you're doing? Now, to tell you guys the truth, I didn't even really know that I even had a system until I became a black belt. Now, I want to be very clear that most students actually have some kind of training system, just most of the time it's unorganized or it's very chaotic. That is much different than actually having a developed and well thought out training system. The reason why that's so important is because if you're just randomly guessing what techniques or what things to train, then you're severely wasting time and you're not going to see the results that I know everyone is wanting to train. The way that I became privy to this idea was actually from a white belt student of mine. We were doing a private lesson one day and he asked me, "Hey coach, if you're wanting to get your arm locks better, how do I actually do that? How do you go about like training the arm lock?" It kind of struck me for a second because I didn't really have a clear-cut answer. I gave him the general things that most students hear. Oh, well, you drill it more, or oh, you tried in rolling, or oh, you just figure it out. But the fact that I couldn't actually provide him like a concrete step-by-step idea really bothered me. And then I had an epiphany that I was like, oh my goodness, I need to really sit down and be able to develop some kind of a strategy to give to students so they can start actually training Jiu-Jitsu smarter. And a lot of times this becomes something that puts on the back burner of our idea because we're so infatuated with collecting as much new information and collecting these new techniques, and we're having so much fun rolling and sparring, we don't realize that maybe there's some things that we should be working on that we just blindly don't think about. There's even some techniques that I know that are good for me, but because I don't know how to actually put them through some kind of a training system, they don't get any better. And so I severely missed out on potential opportunities because I just didn't do the work and I just never have been shown how to develop a system. Now, I want to make it very easy for you guys. It's not your fault. I didn't even learn how to do this into a step-by-step process, like I said, till I became a black belt. And so because that struck me so hard, I then sat down and had to figure out a way to create something for a student, right? I wanted to create a way that now when I teach my students, instead of just showing them 50 different arm locks, I actually teach them what they need to be training, what needs to enter into the system, how to actually train it, what's the effective ways to do it, should they be drilling, should they be sparring, who should they be sparring with, and then how to actually measure if it's working. So that is the idea of what an effective system is. Let me know down below what your training process is. Do you even have one? If you do, I would love to hear about it. Also, check out my free training where I go into a lot more detail about how to develop some kind of training system for yourself. So let's expand on each of the phases. So the first phase, what is entering into your system? Every system or every process or every plan has to have a starting point. Now, this is the grand debate. Most students, they're usually like, I have no idea what I'm training. I have no idea what I should be training, what I need to be improving. And the reality is there are hundreds of things at any given time that a student needs to improve. It's really either up to you or to get with a coach or a training partner and really determine what are the things that are going to make the biggest difference in your jiu-jitsu training. So you need to start with some kind of a potential focus that is actually going to increase your skill level. And if you can figure that out, you're on the right track. The second key component is which kind of training methods. So kind of like, are you gonna solo drill? Are you gonna spar? What are your training methods to actually improve whatever technique or position you're wanting to work on? If you're needing to just remember something you can't remember, you're having a hard time in live training remembering steps of a technique, drilling is gonna be more appropriate for that, and that's gonna help improve that technique. If you're wanting to test it against resistance and maybe find some of the flaws in it, sparring is going to be more helpful for that. Sometimes it's just about doing the movement and doing it over and over again. And in some of those cases, you can do that at home without any kind of a training partner. What are the resources, right? What are the things that you're going to do in order to improve your training? How are you going to actually use those tools and leverage those tools to make sure whatever you entered into your system actually gets better? And the third component is including some kind of measurable or way to determine if it was successful. So kind of like, did that work or did it not work, right? Am I on the right track or am I not on the right track? So how do I actually measure the results? How do I measure what's going on? And a really simple way to do this is when you start out, have some type of goal or plan. So you don't have to get too detailed. Let's make it simple. So if I'm wanting to get better at maybe escaping the mount position, I need to determine how long I'm going to train it for. So maybe I'm going to focus on it for 2 weeks. And then I write down how it's difficult. How is the mount escape difficult? What kind of partners is it difficult with? Maybe some steps I can't remember. And then I focus on training that for 2 weeks. Then after 2 weeks, I come back and I reflect back on those and I measure those. I see, did I learn more about it? Is it easier to do against this training partner in live rolling? So you need to set some kind of measurables. Basically, you need to make a goal. You need to make some kind of point, like from point A to point B, right? From A to Z, like how are you actually gonna get there? What are you trying to get to? Where are you going at the end of your rainbow? So if you can do that, now you actually have a tangible way to measure your results. Students very frequently look at jiu-jitsu in the big picture as wins or losses. Unless they tapped a person or they didn't get tapped, it's either win or loss. It's pretty straightforward. But a lot of times training is the idea of working on little different bits of pieces of here and a little bit of piece here and a little bit of piece there in order to accumulate a mass amount of wins. So having a lot of little wins, it can't just be as black and white as loss or win. Now, I know what most of you thinking, well, Chase, you were a black belt when you did this, so no wonder it's easy. First off, only one of those statements is true, and it's the embarrassing one. Yeah, I was a black belt whenever I figured this out. And like I said earlier, a lot of times students have a process, it's just very passive. They have no idea that they're actually doing it. And you're severely hindering your jiu-jitsu development, basically slowing down your progression. You're not getting as good as fast as you could if you spent time time developing it. And the reason why I know this is because I've now taken a student, that same white belt student that I told you guys earlier about, and he's a purple belt, and he's implemented this system the whole time, right? So whenever he has a problem, he is able to put some kind of problem that he has through his system, and it keeps developing over again, and it spits out a result. And he puts in another one, it comes through and it spits out another result. So a system is something that's just repeatable. It's a process that you guys can do over and over and over again. So it doesn't matter what belt level you are, what skill level you are. The great thing about a system is that the framework, basically how it's kind of constructed, like step 1, step 2, step 3, is all the same per belt. It doesn't matter if I'm a white belt or I'm a crazy skilled black belt. The framework is always there. The only thing that might slightly change is the information that goes in. So for example, if I'm a white belt, I would start with very basic and fundamental ideas. I would start off with maybe shrimping more, maybe escaping more, maybe surviving this amount of time, but I have some kind of easy thing to do. If I'm a brown belt, it might be, man, I want to hit bearing bolos. I want to do inverted spider guard, right? So there's all kinds of things that can go into your system, but regardless, the framework or the steps are all the same to make it better. But I encourage you to start developing some kind of step-by-step process. Either get with your coach or get with somebody and learn how to do it, because you guys are severely missing out on this little thing that if you implemented could have massive payoffs and massive results that seems like no one is teaching anybody. Also, one of the best parts is that you guys don't have to learn a million techniques in order to make this work. Sometimes we get very focused on like jiu-jitsu instructionals, and if I could just learn this technique or if I can learn that technique, it's gonna fix all my problems. And 99% of the time, that's not true. Most of the time, students actually have the solution to their problems. They just have no idea which one is gonna fix it. And that's part of having a system. Once you can develop that, you usually start fixing a lot of your own problems. You can troubleshoot a lot of your own issues. So if you guys are liking this information, make sure you check out my free training down below where I go into a lot more detail about this stuff. If you're super interested and you wanna start developing your own system right away, this is what I do on an everyday basis. I help students online. I only accept students via application because I want to make sure that I work with the right type of student and we're both a good fit. So if you're into that, make sure you go down to the description down below and check it out and fill out your application today. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.